The fuel enters the inlet side of the aftertreatment fuel shutoff manifold and travels to the normally closed fuel shutoff valve. The aftertreatment fuel shutoff manifold contains two shutoff valves. The first shutoff valve 1, allows fuel to travel in the aftertreatment fuel manifold to the aftertreatment fuel manifold pressure sensor, and the secondary fuel shutoff valve 2. Shutoff valve 2 is used to release pressure from the aftertreatment injector to the drain line when it is not in use. Once the fuel leaves the aftertreatment fuel shutoff manifold outlet, it travels through the specifically designed steel tubing, incorporating a steel-reinforced flexible end to the aftertreatment injector on the right side of the engine. The fuel enters the inlet of the injector. The fuel travels through the injector, filling the needle valve retainer. The retainer has a drilling that allows flow to both sides in order to equalize hydraulic pressure on the retainer. After filling the needle valve retainer chamber, the fuel continues through a drilling in the center of the injector plunger, through a drilling to the nozzle body, to the lower portion of the injector plunger. The fuel fills the nozzle and moves through a side drilling to the injector plunger tip. When the ECM sends a signal to the injector, the spring-loaded injector plunger is pulled up by a magnetic force exerted on the needle valve retainer. The signal that is applied to the injector coil is PWM, which is duty cycled to pulse the injector. Each time the injector is pulsed, it allows hydrocarbons under pressure from the gear pump to be atomized into the exhaust stream. The longer the pulse, the greater the injection volume. The ECM will display this pulse length as injector on or off. The aftertreatment injector is a normally closed device. When the ECM sends a signal to the injector, the spring-loaded injector plunger is pulled up by a magnetic pull exerted on the needle valve retainer. The longer the injector receives the signal, the more hydrocarbon is injected into the exhaust stream. Once the signal from the ECM is eliminated, the injector plunger is forced back to seat by the injection spring. To remove the aftertreatment fuel injector, drain the coolant and disconnect the pigtail from the aftertreatment injector. Remove the coolant connection to the EGR cooler. Remove the upper coolant line from the injector housing. Insert a coolant plug in the EGR cooler. Remove the lower coolant line. Plug the lower coolant line. Remove the P-clip connected to the EGR cooler. Remove the aftertreatment injector supply line and the heat shield. Remove the injector mounting bolts. Remove the aftertreatment fuel injector. After removing the injector mounting bolts and the aftertreatment injector, install the aftertreatment injector supply line extension. Install the aftertreatment injector plug. Be sure not to tighten the aftertreatment injector plug all the way down. You will need to leave room to install the aftertreatment injector plug gasket. Install the aftertreatment injector plug gasket. tighten the aftertreatment injector plug. Install the wiring harness extension to the engine's wiring harness. Connect the aftertreatment injector supply line extension and the wiring harness extension to the injector. Connect inside using an inline connection and start the engine. While holding the injector over the measuring container, inspect the injector for leaks. To do this, hold the injector above the measuring container and place a baggie over the injector. Run the Insight performance test for the aftertreatment injector and collect the fuel in the measuring container. Once you are done with the injector test, disconnect the wiring harness extension, disconnect the supply line extension to the injector, and install the injector gasket.